Marcus walked into the big music hall with his head held high. He was the best piano player in the city, and he knew it. Everyone knew it. At 35 years old, he had won many awards and had his picture in music magazines. His expensive black suit and shiny shoes showed everyone how important he was. Today, Marcus was a judge at the city's yearly piano contest. He sat at the judge's table and looked at his watch. He was already bored. He had better things to do than listen to people who could never play as well as him. "Let's get this over with," he said to the other judges. "I have dinner plans at the HAE. Golden Leaf." The Golden Leaf was the most expensive restaurant in town, where only special people could get a table. The first few players were just as Marcus expected. A nervous teenage boy who played too fast. An old woman who missed many notes. A little girl who stopped in the middle because she forgot what came next. Marcus wrote harsh comments on his judging paper and barely clapped when they finished. During a break, Marcus went to the refreshment table where people gathered around him. They always did. They asked about his next big concert and praised his Lat's recording. Marcus smiled and acted modest, but inside, he loved their attention. "You know, I practiced 8 hours every day since I was 4 years old," he told a young piano student who asked for advice. "That's why I'm where I am. Talent is nice, but hard work at the best schools with the best teachers is what makes a real pianist." After the break, more players came and went. Marcus yawned behind his program. None of these people understood what real music was. None of them had his skill, his training, his natural gift. Then contestant number 17 was called Sarah Miller, the announcer said. A woman walked onto the stage. She was about 40 years old, with brown hair tied back simply. She wore a plain blue dress that wasn't fancy or new. She didn't walk like someone important. She just walked normally. To the piano and sat down. Marcus smirked at the other judges. "She'd be quick," he whispered. He expected another disappointing performance. Sarah took a deep breath. She closed her eyes for a moment, and her fingers touched the piano keys. The music that filled the hall made everyone sit up straight. She played Chopin, a very hard piece, that even good pianists struggled with. But Sarah didn't struggle. Her fingers moved across the keys like they were having a conversation with the piano. Marcus stopped writing on his paper. He put down his pen and just listened. Something wasn't right. This woman played too well. Who was she? Why hadn't he heard of her before? She wasn't playing just the notes on the page. She was playing something more, something that made people in the audience wipe tears from their eyes. When Sarah finished, the crowd stood up and clapped loudly. They cheered and called for her to play more. Sarah just smiled shyly and bowed her head a little, like she was surprised by their reaction. The judges talked among themselves. "That was incredible," said Mrs. Johnson, an old piano teacher who rarely got excited about anything. "Yes, best performance of the day, no question," agreed Mr. Patel, the music school director. Marcus felt his face getting hot. "It was technically good," he said, "but a bit simple in interpretation, don't you think?" The other judges looked at him like he was speaking another language. "Simple. That was the most moving Chopin I've heard in years," said Mrs. Johnson. When they added up the scores, Sarah won first place. It wasn't even close. Marcus's score for her was the only one that wasn't perfect at the award ceremony. Sarah accepted the small trophy and the check for $500 with a big smile. "Thank you so much," she said into the microphone. "Music has been my greatest joy since I was a child. I'm just happy to share it with others." Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Sarah's playing. It bothered him. He was supposed to be the best pianist in the city. Who was this woman who came from nowhere? After the ceremony, while people were eating cake and drinking punch, Marcus walked up to Sarah. She was talking to a little girl who had played earlier. "Your left-hand position is very good," Sarah was telling the child. "You have natural talent. Keep practicing those scales." The little girl beamed with pride before running back to her parents. Marcus cleared his throat. Sarah turned and looked up at him. "Oh, hello, Mr. Bennett. It's an honor to meet you. I've heard your recordings." Marcus liked that she knew who he was. Of course she did. Everyone did. You played well today, he said, but his voice didn't sound like he meant it. Where did you study Juilliard, Curtis? Vienna. These were the best music schools in the world. Marcus had studied at Juilliard himself. Sarah smiled. Oh, I never went to music school. I took lessons from Mrs. Abernathy down on Elm Street until I was 16. After that, I mostly taught myself. Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. This woman had never been to music school. She had learned from a local piano teacher and then by herself. Impossible. You expect me to believe you played Chopin like that without proper training? His voice was getting louder. People nearby started to look in their direction. Music isn't just about training, Mr. Bennett, Sarah said quietly. It's about feeling and sharing something true. Now Marcus was angry. This woman was suggesting that all his years of expensive education, all his hard work, all his sacrifice, wasn't what made a real pianist. Anyone can feel music, he said, but only trained professionals can play it properly. He got lucky today with the judges. There was Ali impressed by emotion. But real musicians would hear all the flaws in your playing. Sarah didn't look upset by his words. She just looked at him with kind eyes, which made him even angrier. If you're so confident in your self-taught skills, Marcus said, loud enough, for everyone nearby to hear, then you won't mind proving yourself in a real test. I challenge you to a piano duel. 2 weeks from today, Symphony Hall. We'll each play 3 pieces, and we'll let real music critics decide who's better. The room got very quiet. Everyone stared at them. Piano duels were something from the old days when famous pianists like Liszt and Thalberg competed against each other. Nobody did this anymore. Mr. Bennett, that's really not necessary, Sarah said. Today was just for fun. I'm not trying to compete with professional pianists. Like you, are you afraid? Marcus asked with a mean smile. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Then she sighed. No, I'm not afraid. If you want to play together at Symphony Hall, I accept your challenge. People around them gasped. Mrs. Johnson dropped her punch cup. Mr. Patel's mouth fell open. Marcus smiled. In 2 weeks, he would show everyone who the real pianist was. He would practice his most difficult pieces, the ones that would impress everyone with their technical difficulty. This woman might play with feeling, but she couldn't match his skill. Excellent, he said. I'll have my assistant contact you. With the details, as Marcus walked away, he heard people whispering. They were excited about the duel. Some were already betting on who would win. Marcus laughed to himself. As if there was any question, he would crush this amateur and put her in her place. What Marcus didn't see was the sad look in Sarah's eyes as she watched him go. She didn't want this competition. She didn't care about being the best. She just loved music. But now, she had to play this game that Marcus needed so badly to win. The news of the piano duel spread quickly around the city. By the next morning, it was in the local newspaper. By the afternoon, all the tickets for Symphony Hall were sold out. Everyone wanted to see the famous Marcus Bennett face off against the unknown, Sarah Miller. The stage was set for a musical battle that would change both their lives forever. The morning after the competition, Marcus woke up early. He couldn't sleep well. The thought of Sarah's playing kept coming back to him. How could someone without proper training play so beautifully? It made no sense. It made him angry. Marcus lived in a big apartment on the top floor of a fancy building. Walls were covered with his awards and photos of him with famous people. He had a special room just for his grand piano, which cost more than most people's houses. He went to his piano room and looked at his calendar. He had 2 weeks before the duel with Sarah. 2 weeks to prepare a performance that would show everyone he was the best. Michael, he called for his assistant. Cancel all my lessons and concerts for the next 2 weeks. I need to practice. Michael. A young man who followed Marcus everywhere rushed into the room. But sir, you have important students coming? The charity concert on Saturday? Cancel everything, Marcus repeated. This is more important. The next few days, Marcus practiced harder than he had in years. He chose the most difficult pieces he knew. Liszt's La Campanella, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto, No. 3, and Chopin's Etude Op. 10, No. 4. These pieces were famous for being almost impossible to play. Only the very best pianists could play them. Well, Marcus would show Sarah and everyone else what real skill looked like. He practiced for 10 hours each day. His fingers moved so fast, they became a blur. Sometimes they hurt, but he didn't stop. He ordered food delivered to his apartment and ate, while playing scales. He barely slept. "Find out everything about this Sarah Miller," he told Michael. "I want to know who she is and how she learned to play." 2 days later, Michael came back with information. "She lives in a small house on the east side of town," he said. "She gives piano lessons to children in her home. $20 per hour. She also plays at the nursing home every Sunday for free." "That's it?" Marcus asked. "What about performances, recordings, teachers?" "Nothing, sir," Michael said.
Jeez.
"Just a piano teacher. She's never performed professionally before the competition. Her neighbors say she's very kind. She takes care of her sick mother who lives with her." Marcus couldn't believe it. This woman was nobody, just a local piano teacher who played for old people. How could she play Chopin like that? "What about her piano?" Marcus asked. "She must have a good instrument to practice on." Michael looked at his notes. "She has an old upright piano that belonged to her grandmother. It's probably worth about $2,000. Marcus laughed. His piano cost $150,000. How could she possibly prepare for their duel on an old upright piano? This was going to be even easier than he thought. Meanwhile, across town, Sarah was giving a piano lesson to a 10-year-old boy named Tommy. "That's very good, Tommy," she said, as he finished playing a simple Mozart piece. "Your right hand is much smoother now. Let's work on the left hand a little more." After Tommy left, Sarah's mother called from her bedroom. "Sarah, dear, was that?" "About the piano contest in the newspaper. Are you really going to play against that famous pianist?" Sarah went to her mother's room. Her mother was old and sick, and Sarah had been taking care of her for many years. "Yes, Mom," Mr. Bennett challenged. "Me too, a duel at Symphony Hall. I didn't want to, but he seemed so upset when I won the contest." "But why, dear? You don't need to prove anything to anyone." Sarah sat on the edge of her mother's bed. "I know, Mom. But sometimes people like Mr. Bennett need to learn that music isn't about being the best. It's about sharing something beautiful. Maybe this is a chance to show him that." After her mother fell asleep, Sarah went to her piano. It was old, but she loved it. Her grandmother had taught her to play on this same piano when she was just 5 years old. The sound wasn't perfect, but it had a warm, special quality. Unlike Marcus, Sarah didn't change her routine much. She still gave lessons to her students every day. She still played at the nursing home on Sunday, but in the quiet hours, early in the morning and late at night, she practiced for the duel. She chose pieces that meant something special to her. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, which was her mother's favorite, Chopin's Nocturne Op. 9 No. 2, which she had played at her best friend's wedding, and Bach's Prelude in C major. The first piece her grandmother taught her. These weren't the most technically difficult pieces, but they had deep meaning for Sarah when she played them. She thought about the people she loved and the moments that mattered in her life. A week before the duel, a reporter from the local newspaper came to interview Sarah. "How are you preparing to compete against Marcus Bennett?" the reporter asked. "He's considered one of the best pianists in the country." Sarah smiled. "I'm not really competing. I'm just going to play the music I love and hope people enjoy it." "Don't you want to win?" The reporter seemed confused. "Winning isn't why I play music," Sarah said. "Play because it brings joy, to me and to others." The reporter wrote this down, but he didn't really understand. Everyone wanted to win, didn't they? The day before the duel, Symphony Hall was buzzing with excitement. Workers were setting up 2 grand pianos on the stage. The hall could seat 2,000 people, and every ticket was sold. Important music critics from big cities were coming to watch. It was going to be the biggest music event the city had ever seen. Marcus came to check the pianos that afternoon, played a few notes on each one, making sure they were perfect. "This one," he said, pointing to the piano on the right. "Play this one. It has better action." The hall manager nodded. "Yes, sir, Mr. Bennett. And Miss Miller will play the other one." Just then, Sarah walked in. She looked small in the big empty hall. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, not fancy clothes like Marcus. "Hello, Mr. Bennett," she said politely. "The hall is beautiful, isn't it?" Marcus barely looked at her. "Have you ever even played on a concert grand piano before?" he asked coldly. "A few times," Sarah said. "At my students' recitals sometimes. They're wonderful instruments." Marcus laughed. "Well, tomorrow you'll be playing on this one." He pointed to the piano on the left. "I hope you can handle it." Sarah walked to the piano and gently touched the keys. She played a few notes, feeling the sound fill the big hall. "It's lovely," she said quietly. "Thank you for the opportunity to play on such a beautiful instrument." Okay, her kindness made Marcus even more annoyed. Why wasn't she nervous? Why wasn't she practicing frantically like he had been? Didn't she understand what was at stake? "Tomorrow, we'll see who the real pianist is," he said sharply, and walked away. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep again. Got up and practiced his pieces one more time, making sure every note was perfect. He thought about all the critics who would be watching. He imagined the headlines the next day. "Marcus Bennett proves his superiority in historic piano duel." Across town, Sarah also couldn't sleep. She wasn't practicing. She was sitting by her mother's bed, holding her hand. "I'm nervous, Mom," she admitted. "Just play from your heart like you always do," her mother said. "That's all that matters." Sarah nodded. "I just hope Mr. Bennett finds what he's looking for tomorrow. He seems so unhappy even though he has everything." As the night grew late, both pianists finally slept. Tomorrow would change everything for both of them, but in ways neither could imagine. The day of the piano duel arrived. Symphony Hall looked like it was hosting a movie premiere. People dressed in fancy clothes stood in line outside. Reporters with cameras waited to take pictures. A red carpet had been rolled out at the entrance. Inside, workers made last-minute checks on the two grand pianos sitting side by side on the stage. The lights were adjusted. Sound engineers tested the microphones. Everything had to be perfect for the big event. In a private room backstage, Marcus paced back and forth. He wore an expensive black suit made just for him. His hair was perfectly styled. He looked like a movie star. "Is everyone here?" he asked Michael, his assistant. "Yes, sir. The hall is full. All the important critics are in the front row. Newspaper reporters are here too, and 3 TV stations." Marcus smiled. This was exactly what he wanted, everyone watching as he proved he was the best. "What about her?" he asked. "Is she here yet?" Michael nodded. "Miss Miller arrived 10 minutes ago. She's in the other preparation room, in her small dressing room." Sarah sat quietly. She wore a simple dark blue dress, the nicest one she owned, though it wasn't new or expensive. Her hands were folded in. Her lap, her eyes were closed. There was a knock at the door. It was Tommy, her 10-year-old student, holding a small bunch of flowers. "These are for you, Miss Sarah," he said shyly. "My mom and I picked them from our garden." Sarah smiled and took the flowers. "Thank you, Tommy. That's so kind of you." "Are you scared?" Tommy asked. "There are so many people out there." Sarah thought for a moment. "A little nervous, yes, but not scared. When I play, I forget about the people watching. I just focus on the music. I think you'll win," Tommy said confidently. Sarah gave him a hug. "It's not about winning, Tommy. Remember what I always tell you. Music isn't a competition. It's about sharing something beautiful with others." At exactly 7 p.m., the lights in the hall dimmed. The audience got quiet. A man in a tuxedo walked onto the stage and stood at a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this historic musical event. Tonight, 2 extraordinary pianists will share their art with us. The format is simple. Each pianist will play 3 pieces. Our distinguished panel of music critics will offer their thoughts. But you, the audience, will have the final say on who has moved you more deeply." The audience clapped excitedly. "First, please welcome one of our city's greatest musical treasures, the internationally acclaimed Marcus Bennett." People stood up and cheered as Marcus walked onto the stage. He smiled and waved like a king greeting his subjects. He bowed deeply, then sat at the piano on the right side of the stage. Marcus took a deep breath and began to play Liszt's La Campanella. His fingers flew over the keys at amazing speed. The piece was known as one of the hardest piano pieces ever written, and Marcus played every note perfectly. His hands jumped and crossed over each other in a blur. The audience watched with wide eyes, amazed by his skill. When he finished, people jumped to their feet, clapping and cheering. Marcus stood and bowed several times, enjoying their praise. And now, the announcer said when the crowd finally quieted, "Please welcome Sarah Miller." The applause for Sarah was polite but not as loud. Many people in the audience had never heard of her before the competition. She walked to the piano on the left side of the stage with a small smile. She nodded to the audience instead of bowing. Sarah sat at the piano and closed her eyes for a moment. Then she began to play Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. From the first notes, something changed in the hall. The audience became very still. This piece wasn't as technically difficult as what Marcus had played, but the way Sarah played it was different. The gentle, sad melody seemed to touch something deep in everyone who heard it. Sarah didn't look at her hands while she played. Sometimes her eyes were closed. Sometimes she looked up as if she could see something no one else could see. Her body swayed gently with the music. In the audience, some people had tears in their eyes. They forgot they were at a contest, forgot to think about who was better. They just felt the music. When Sarah finished, there was a moment of complete silence, and the audience began to clap. It wasn't the excited, impressed clapping they had given Marcus. It was something deeper, more personal. Backstage, Marcus watched on a small TV screen. His face was tight with anger and confusion. Sarah's playing wasn't as technically perfect as his. She had played a much simpler piece, but the audience was clearly moved by it. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. "It's time for your second piece, sir," Michael reminded him. Marcus nodded and walked back onto the stage. This time he would play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto. No, 3 or part of it, since the full piece would be too long. This was even harder than his first piece. Only the very best pianists in the world could play it well. Again, Marcus's performance was amazing. His fingers seemed to be everywhere at once. The music was big and powerful. The audience gasped at how fast and perfectly he played. When he finished, they cheered loudly again. Sarah returned to the stage for her second piece, Chopin's Nocturne OPB 902. Again, she chose a piece that wasn't as technically difficult as Marcus's. But as she played, something magical happened. The sweet, gentle melody seemed to float through the air like a beautiful dream. Sarah played as if she were telling a story about love and memories and quiet happiness. People in the audience closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Some reached out to hold hands with the person sitting next to them in the front row. One of the famous music critics, a man known for being very hard to please, wiped tears from his eyes. When Sarah finished, the audience's reaction was even stronger than before. They clapped for a long time, and many people stood up. Marcus watched from the side of the stage, his hands clenched into fists. He was playing better. His pieces were harder. He was doing everything right. So why were they responding to her simple playing this way? For the third and final round, Marcus decided to play his most impressive piece, Chopin's Etude OPP 10-4. It was incredibly fast and difficult. He attacked the piano, playing louder and faster than before. His face showed his determination. He would not be beaten by this amateur. The audience was amazed by his speed and skill. No normal person could play like this. When he finished, they cheered and clapped, impressed by his incredible technique. Now it was Sarah's turn to play her final piece. She walked slowly to the piano. She seemed tired, but her face was peaceful. She sat down and placed her hands on the keys. The piece she played was Bach's Prelude in C major. It was one of the simplest pieces in classical piano, something that even beginning students learned. Marcus almost laughed when he heard her start playing it. Why would she choose such an easy piece for the final round? But as Sarah played, something happened that no one expected. This simple piece in her hands became something new. Each note seemed to ring with perfect clarity, like drops of water falling into a still pond. The simple pattern of notes became hypnotic, peaceful, and deeply moving. Sarah played as if she were having a quiet conversation with an old friend. There was love in every note. When she reached the end, she played the final chord so gently it seemed to float in the air. The hall was completely silent for several long seconds. Then, as if waking from a dream, the audience began to applaud. They stood up one by one until everyone in the hall was standing. The applause grew louder and louder. People called out bravo. Some were crying. Marcus stood at the side of the stage, watching in disbelief. He had played 3 of the hardest pieces in piano literature perfectly. She had played 3 of the simplest pieces. And yet the audience was giving her a standing ovation that seemed like it would never end. For the first time in his life, Marcus Bennett felt something he had never felt before: doubt. After the performances ended, the audience continued to clap for a long time. The announcer had to wave his hands several times to quiet them down. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, "what an incredible evening of music we have experienced. Now, our panel of distinguished music critics will share their thoughts on what we've heard tonight." 5 people sat at a table near the front of the hall. They were famous music critics from big newspapers and music magazines. People respected their opinions about music. The first critic, an older man with white hair and glasses, spoke into a microphone. "I have been listening to piano performances for over 40 years. Tonight we witnessed 2 very different approaches to music. Mr. Bennett showed us extraordinary technical skill. His playing was precise and powerful. Miss Miller showed us extraordinary emotional depth. Her playing was sincere and moving." The second critic, a woman in a red dress, spoke next. "When I judge a performance, I look for both technical excellence and emotional connection. Mr. Bennett's technique was flawless, but technique alone is not enough. Miss Miller may have played simpler pieces, but she played them with a rare sensitivity that touched our hearts." The third critic nodded. "I was particularly struck by Miss Miller's batch, such a simple piece, yet I have never heard it played with such clarity and meaning. It reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place." The fourth critic disagreed slightly. "Mr. Bennett's Rachmaninoff was spectacular. The speed and accuracy were breathtaking. That level of virtuosity deserves recognition." The fifth critic had the final word. "Music is a language that speaks to our souls. Tonight, Mr. Bennett spoke with impressive vocabulary and perfect grammar. Miss Miller spoke fewer words, but what she said brought tears to our eyes. Both are accomplished musicians, but they reminded us of different aspects of what makes music important." As the critics spoke, Marcus stood backstage, his face growing darker. This wasn't supposed to happen. The critics were supposed to recognize his superior skill. They were supposed to dismiss Sarah as an amateur. Instead, they were speaking about her with respect and admiration. And now, the announcer said, "It's time for our audience to decide. Who moved you more tonight? Please show your appreciation first for Mr. Marcus Bennett." The audience clapped loudly. Some people stood, and for Miss Sarah Miller, the hall erupted with applause. Everyone stood up. Some people whistled and cheered. It was clear who had won the audience's heart. Marcus couldn't watch anymore. He turned and walked quickly to his dressing room, slamming the door behind him. He threw his music sheets across the room. How could this happen? How could he lose? To a piano teacher who played simple pieces on an old upright piano at home, there was a knock at his door. Michael, his assistant, entered nervously. "Sir, they're asking for you on stage for the final bow." "Tell them I'm not coming," Marcus snapped. "I have a headache." "But sir, it's tradition. The audience is waiting. I don't care. Get out." Michael left quickly, closing the door behind him. Marcus sat alone, his head in his hands. The first time in many years, he felt like a failure. All his awards, all his reviews, all his sold-out concerts suddenly seemed meaningless. He had just played the best he had ever played in his life, and it wasn't enough. The audience had preferred Sarah's simple, emotional playing to his technical brilliance. Meanwhile, on stage, Sarah stood alone, accepting the applause. She looked toward the side of the stage, expecting Marcus to join her, but he didn't appear. The audience continued to clap, but Sarah felt sad. This wasn't what she had wanted. She hadn't wanted to win or to make Marcus look bad. After the applause finally ended and people began to leave, Sarah went backstage. She saw Michael standing outside Marcus's dressing room looking worried. "Is Mr. Bennett okay?" she asked. "He's upset," Michael said. "He doesn't want to see anyone." Sarah nodded. "I understand. Please tell him I said thank you for the opportunity to play tonight. It was an honor to share the stage with him." She turned to go, but then stopped and looked back at Michael. "You know, he really did play beautifully. His technique is amazing." In his dressing room, Marcus could hear their conversation through the door. He felt a flash of anger at Sarah's kindness. He didn't want her pity. Later that night, after everyone had left, Marcus sat alone in the empty hall. He walked to the piano Sarah had played and sat down. He placed his hands on the keys but didn't press them. What was missing from his playing? Why couldn't he move people the way she did? He began to play the Bach prelude that Sarah had played. He played it perfectly, every note exactly right. But it didn't sound the same. It didn't have the same magic that Sarah's playing had. It was just notes. The next morning, the newspapers were full of stories about the piano duel. The headlines were not what Marcus had expected. "Humble piano teacher wins. Hearts in historic duel. Bennett's skill meets Miller's soul. Music is the winner." Simple pieces played with love triumph over technical display. Marcus read the reviews with growing anger. One critic wrote, "Bennett plays like a man who wants to impress you. Miller plays like someone who wants to share something beautiful with you. Last night we learned which approach touches us more deeply." He threw the newspapers in the trash and didn't answer his phone all day. People left messages asking for interviews, but he ignored them all. 3 days after the duel, Marcus was still hiding in his apartment when his doorbell rang. He ignored it, but it rang again. Finally, he went to the door and looked through the peephole. It was Sarah. For a moment, he thought about pretending he wasn't home, but then he sighed and opened the door. "Hello, Mr. Bennett," Sarah said. She looked smaller here in his fancy building. "I hope I'm not bothering you. What do you want?" Marcus asked coldly. "Come to enjoy your victory." Sarah shook her head. "No, not at all. Wanted to thank you again for the opportunity to play at Symphony Hall. It was a wonderful experience." Marcus just stared at her, not sure what to say. "May I come in for a moment?" Sarah asked. Against his better judgment, Marcus stepped aside and let her in. Sarah looked around at his expensive furniture, his awards, his photos with famous people. "You've had an impressive career," she said. "Till you ruined it," Marcus said bitterly. "Now everyone's talking about you, not me." "I didn't want that," Sarah said quietly. "That's not why I play music." "Then why do you play?" Marcus asked. "If not to be recognized, to be the best, then why?" Sarah thought for a moment. "Do you remember the first time you fell in love with music? Before the lessons and the competitions and the critics? Do you remember how it made you feel?" Marcus was silent. He did remember. He was 6 years old, listening to his mother play. The piano, the music, had seemed like magic to him then. "That feeling," Sarah said. "That's why I play, to feel that again and to share it with others, not to be better than anyone else." Marcus looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. There was no pride in her eyes, no desire to prove herself, just a simple love for music. "I've been playing piano for 30 years, Marcus said. Won competitions all over the world. I've played for presidents and kings. How can you, with your simple pieces and your old piano, make people feel more than I can?" Sarah smiled. "Gently, maybe, because I'm not trying to make them feel anything. I'm just sharing what I feel when I play. People can sense when you're playing for them instead of for yourself." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. It was so different from everything he had been taught about music and success. "I brought you something," Sarah said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a book of sheet music. It was old and well used. "This was my grandmother's," she said. "It's the first book I learned to play from. Sometimes, when I forget why I love music, I go back to these simple pieces. Maybe it might help you too." She placed the book on his coffee table and turned to leave. "Why are you being kind to me?" Marcus asked. "I was horrible to you. I tried to humiliate you." Sarah paused at the door. Because music isn't a competition, Mr. Bennett. It's a gift we share. I think you have so much more to share than you've allowed yourself to. With that, she left, closing the door quietly behind her. For several days after Sarah's visit, Marcus didn't touch his piano. The old book of sheet music she had given him sat on his coffee table, untouched. He ignored calls from his agent, his students, and the music school where he taught. He ordered food to be delivered and stayed inside his apartment, feeling sorry for himself. One morning, about a week after the duel, Marcus woke up early. The sun was just rising, sending golden light through his windows. Without thinking too much about it, he walked to his piano and sat down. He opened Sarah's book of sheet music and looked at the simple pieces inside. The first piece was a children's song he had learned when he was 6 years old. It was so easy he could play it with one finger. He almost closed the book, but something stopped him. He placed his hands on the keys and began to play the simple melody. At first, he played it mechanically, just hitting the right notes. But then he remembered what Sarah had said about playing from the heart. He closed his eyes and tried to remember how he felt when he first learned this song as a child. He remembered sitting next to his mother on the piano bench, how big the piano had seemed, how magical it was that pressing keys could create such beautiful sounds. As these memories came back, something changed in his playing. The simple melody became beautiful, like a story being told. When he finished, Marcus sat in silence for a moment, surprised by what had just happened. He turned the page and played another simple piece, and another. For hours he played through the book, rediscovering the joy of these basic songs. He wasn't playing to impress anyone. He was playing for himself, for the pure joy of making music. That afternoon, Marcus did something he hadn't done in years. He went for a walk in the park. As he walked, he noticed things he usually ignored: children laughing, birds singing, the sound of the wind in the trees. It was as if a wall had come down between him and the world. On his way home, he passed a nursing home. Sign on the door caught his eye: piano volunteer needed for Sunday afternoons. He remembered that Sarah played at a nursing home every Sunday. Without really understanding why, Marcus went inside and offered to play the following Sunday. The next day, Marcus called Michael, his assistant. "Cancel my European tour," he said. "What?" Michael couldn't believe what he was hearing. "But, sir, these concerts have been planned for months. Tickets are sold out. I need some time," Marcus said. "I need to rethink some things." Over the next few weeks, Marcus began to change. He started teaching his students differently. Instead of focusing only on technique and perfection, he asked them what they loved about the music they were playing. He listened more and criticized less. He played at the nursing home every Sunday. At first, he played difficult pieces to impress the residents. But he soon realized they didn't care about technical difficulty. They wanted songs that reminded them of happy times in their lives, simple melodies that made them smile or brought tears to their eyes. One Sunday, as Marcus was finishing his performance at the nursing home, he looked up and was surprised to see Sarah standing in the doorway. She had been watching him play. After the residents had thanked him and left the room, Sarah approached him. "That was beautiful," she said. "They loved it." Marcus nodded. "Thank you for the book," he said. "It helped me remember something I had forgotten." Sarah smiled. "Glad I owe you an apology," Marcus said, looking down at the piano keys. "I was arrogant and unkind to you. I challenged you to that duel for all the wrong reasons." "Apology accepted," Sarah said simply. "How do you do it?" Marcus asked. "How do you play with such heart?" Sarah thought for a moment. "When I play, I think about the people I love and the moments that matter to me. I try to put those feelings into the music." They talked for a long time that afternoon. Sarah told Marcus about her students, about her mother who had passed away recently, about her grandmother who had first taught her to play. Marcus found himself telling Sarah things he had never told anyone about the pressure he had always felt to be the best, about how lonely it was at the top, about how playing had stopped bringing him joy years ago. "Would you like to come to my home studio sometime?" Sarah asked. "My students are having a small recital next week. Nothing fancy, just families and friends. They would be thrilled to meet you." Marcus surprised himself by saying yes. The following Saturday, Marcus found himself in Sarah's modest home. Her living room had been arranged with chairs for the audience, mostly parents and grandparents. Her old upright piano stood against one wall, surrounded by potted plants and family photos. The students played one by one simple pieces, often with mistakes. But Marcus noticed how Sarah made each child feel special, how she focused on what they did well rather than their errors. The parents clapped enthusiastically for every performance. At the end, Sarah announced a surprise. A special guest, Mr. Marcus Bennett, has kindly agreed to play something for us. Marcus walked to the old piano. It was nothing like his expensive grand piano at home. Some of the keys were slightly yellow with age, and he could tell it wasn't perfectly in tune. But as he sat down and placed his hands on the keys, he felt a strange comfort. He had planned to play something impressive, but at the last moment, he changed his mind. Instead, he played a simple piece from Sarah's buka lullaby his mother used to play for him. Played it softly, thinking about his mother, about the joy music had once given him, about the new path he was discovering. When he finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then everyone clapped warmly. A little girl came up to him with big eyes. "That was pretty," she said. "I'm learning that one too." Marcus smiled at her. "Keep practicing," he said. "And always remember why you love music." After everyone had left, Marcus helped Sarah clean up. As they put away the chairs, he said, "Thank you for inviting me. This was ... good." Sarah nodded. "You played beautifully today. Different from how you played at Symphony Hall." "Better or worse?" Marcus asked. "Different," Sarah said. "More honest, maybe?" 6 months later, Marcus gave a concert at Symphony Hall, but this time it wasn't a competition. It was a charity event. To raise money for music education in local schools, Sarah was in the audience. The program was not what people expected from Marcus Bennett. Instead of only difficult showpieces, he included simple, beautiful melodies. He played some Bach, some Chopin, and even some pieces written for children. Before the final piece, Marcus spoke to the audience. "Music has been my life," he said. "But recently, I learned an important lesson from a fellow pianist." He looked at Sarah in the audience. "Technical skill is important, but music is about sharing something from your heart. Tonight I want to share something special with you." He played the Bach Prelude in C major, the same piece Sarah had played at their duel. But this time, when Marcus played it, something was different. The simple notes carried emotion and meaning. By the final chord, many people in the audience had tears in their eyes. After the concert, a music critic asked Marcus, "What changed in your playing? Still technically perfect, but there's something else now, something deeper," as Marcus thought. About his journey over the past 6 months, from arrogant star to humbled student, rediscovering why he loved music in the first place. "I stopped trying to be the best pianist in the world," he said, "and started trying to be the most honest one." Later that evening, Marcus and Sarah walked together in the park near Symphony Hall. They had become good friends, teaching each other and learning together. "I never thanked you properly," Marcus said. "For what?" Sarah asked. "For winning our duel," Marcus said with a smile. "It was the best thing that ever happened to me." Sarah laughed. "I never thought of it as winning or losing. It's just as sharing music." Marcus nodded. He understood now. The conceited pianist who had challenged a humble woman to a piano duel had lost that day. The person he was becoming had won something far more valuable than applause or fame. He had rediscovered the true meaning of music. Not to impress, but to express. Not to compete, but to connect. Not to be admired, but to share something beautiful from the heart. And that was a lesson worth learning, even the hard way.